All right, let's get on with the Malarkey report.
So here's, I had 9 conditions that I prepared. Chris had 15 conditions, some are redundant to a few of mine, so I guess I'll just go through it. So in addition to the conditions that were already in my staff report from the last meeting, we had these, and I guess, do you want me to just read them through?
Sure.
All right, the petitioner shall obtain approval of the Waukesha County Comp Plan Amendment for the parcel change from the recreational category to low-density residential with the isolated natural resource designated as environmental corridor. That was brought up at the meeting. They are in the process of that. The petitioner shall include preservation restrictions in the condo plat to the satisfaction of Waukesha County to ensure the portion of the isolated natural resource area not used for septic system locations remains undisturbed.
Okay, let me stop you there, if I may. My note talked about other concerns that the county had. Do we deal with other county concerns or just that one?
Other concerns related to what?
That, the myriad of things that they put into that joint staff report. And I have my notes here, I can get
Sure.
so right back. County list of concerns will need to be addressed. And you delineate one, and that's a very significant one.
There's some others here, yeah, there's some.
Okay, so there are others, okay.
Sean, can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
on 2 there? Are you, and I'll make sure I understand, you're saying that it would be permissible to use the isolated natural resource area for septic systems?
Yes, and the county has stated that they would be open to that, but they wanted to see the tree. They're waiting for the field study for tree locations to determine if they are in fact in the best areas for maximum preservation of trees. So I have not seen anything beyond what was presented at the last meeting.
Okay.
The petitioner shall field delineate the isolated natural resource area and obtain concurrence of the delineation from Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. The petitioner shall provide written documentation from the DNR showing concurrence of the field delineated wetlands. We're waiting on that. They had submitted it for review and had not heard back yet. The petitioner shall provide complete condominium documents for review and approval by the town board. The petitioner shall include restrictions on the condo plat and condo docks, limiting parking on the private roads to only one side to ensure adequate access for traffic and emergency vehicles. The petitioner shall submit to the town clerk and receive approval as to form from the town attorney and town board, approval of a construction, access, and road protection agreement ensuring all construction traffic is limited to the Sun Valley Trail entrance, and the town roads are maintained at a minimum to their condition prior to the start of construction. The petitioner shall include a land stewardship plan for all common areas with the condo plat as a component of the condo documents, and establishing perpetual maintenance and management provisions of each common area to the satisfaction of the town board. The petitioner shall install siren-activated gate sensors at both gated entrances to ensure unhindered and efficient emergency vehicle access. I also raised the point about the waiver from the soft centers and cul-de-sacs for Sun Valley Trail. I could not find anything that allows that to be waived. There are other sections in the, this was taken from the public improvements ordinances, section 62-1. There are other sections in there that talk about appeals process for some of these things, but there's nothing written in that section of the ordinances that allow you to outright waive the soft center, so that could be an issue.
I have that down that you need to write a condition that says they have to petition to amend the code. So make that.
If they want to keep that soft center, they need to petition.
So let's just change that to a condition. I think your research is correct, but
Okay.
let's just make it a condition.
Amend code or remove the soft center.
Yep.
All right, so that was mine, and then Chris had some that he wrote basically concurrently with mine. His first one was development agreement required. I already had that condition in my staff review. Letter of credit, that's also a condition. That's already in staff review. County approved stormwater management plan, erosion control, and stormwater maintenance agreement. I had a general condition in our report that talks about county approvals. So it's pretty much our standard language. It's already there. Concurrence.
Okay, but that's a very specific one, and he wants that in there. So that deals with that stormwater management maintenance agreement, the form.
Let me just say what we got, and then we can. The petitioner shall obtain necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the town of Waukesha and Waukesha County Department of Land Resources for erosion control and stormwater management. So that's already in my staff report. So what needs to be added?
Well, the two things he's got here is erosion control plan, which may or may not. The
So that's in
stormwater.
there. Erosion control and stormwater management plans are in the condition. So the only one would be the stormwater maintenance.
Including, you know, a stormwater maintenance.
Okay, gotcha.
Perfect.
And I thought he had that. Didn't they say that they had a maintenance agreement already?
Yeah.
Well, whether or not they already have it, it would still include as a condition. DNR concurrence, we already talked about that one, and then county plan for zoning, talked about that. Updated construction plans, they have not done that. They also have not updated their condominium plat. So they've updated the site plan that showed the new layout, but the condo plat and construction plans were not updated. So I have not, Kathy, have you seen anything else from them?
I haven't gone through my emails yet.
So they need updated construction plans and condo plat for,
Now, and when we were talking about construction plan, we were talking about the methodology by which they were going to, you know, where they were going to come in and all that.
no, this is their road construction, their engineering
So
drawings.
road construction.
The road, what they're proposing to build up there. Approved final condo plat, we already have that in the standard, our list of the original staff report. So number 8 kind of coincides with what you just mentioned, John. Plans and developer agreements should include notes regarding construction access, minimal use of Oakville Road. I'd written that they should limit their traffic to Sun Valley. That was my understanding. Is that true?
I think yes.
I would say no use of Oak Knoll,
Yep.
unless they can provide a compelling reason.
Okay, so we'll go with my.
Well, and I think they would probably very much agree to that, because why would you want to fix 2 roads?
Right, right. And that gets to Chris's second point, repair town roads used for access. Again, I already included language that talks about an agreement that's set up beforehand, improvement.
And that's because we're of
access
the
and maintenance.
opinion that Oak Knoll is not of a construction standard that can support that traffic?
I don't know if it's not. It's currently constructed suboptimally in terms
Okay.
of current standards.
Okay.
For construction.
So when they're doing their entrance there, do you really think they're going to go all the way through Sun Valley when they're working on the entrance?
Why not?
Right next to it.
If we tell them to.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think we're going to get complaints because I'm guessing we're going to have contractors go.
And I'm just going to ask the question just for the sake of discussion. I'm not saying recommending one way or another. You could make them build this thing through the golf course. Put in a temporary construction road along the path. If that isn't a permanent, their concern, and he didn't say it very artfully, I was very surprised because several times the question was asked by the chairman and others, you know, why can't you use the golf course? When at a staff meeting, I think they told us, but it's not part of the record, it would destroy the golf course. You can't have traffic driving through a hole. He never said that, I don't think, but I didn't hear him say it, but that's not to say a temporary access for the construction. I'm not recommending it, because they would have to build a temporary access road through the driving range, you know, up the cart path through the driving range, and then build their subdivision, and then take it out. But I think I have to at least ask the question when you're talking Sun Valley versus Oak Knoll versus Merrill Hills Road versus other developers have had to do similar things. I don't know to that extent, but, and I don't know if you've ever had anybody do it, you know.
Even if it's not part of their parcel. It's a different parcel.
I can't say whether, sure, I've seen him say, you gotta go get an access easement from your neighbor
Yeah.
and build this thing from the neighbor.
Let's say I own the one and he owns the other, he can come to me and ask.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's reasonable or not reasonable, I'm just saying that this, construction of that road, what is, it's a limited period of time. You build roads, I don't build roads, so
But if they,
how hard would that be? Put in a temporary access to build the roads?
Well, you're gonna dig out all the topsoil. You're gonna dig out some subbase and you're gonna stone it 12 inches thick and then pave it and then you're gonna tear it all back out again.
You have to do all of that to put in it?
oh, yeah, especially that traffic.
And then,
Well, that's what I said, I don't know what's involved, once you get the equipment there.
and then you're gonna be pushing the traffic onto Merrill Hills Road. I've
And Merrill Hills Road, we already have issues, particularly when you head towards Sunset.
I'm not saying it's reasonable or not reasonable, because
Yeah.
they asked that the whole access be through the country club, and I think the impression was that you didn't find that to be reasonable, but that, and maybe the construction road, I didn't know you'd have to do all of that. I thought you'd lay down some gravel and drive your equipment in and drive your equipment out.
Wouldn't that be sweet?
That's not how it's done, huh? You gotta build a whole road to get your stuff in there.
For that amount of traffic.
So I guess the question is then maybe, so not even the construction of the emergency access off of Oak Knoll are they allowed to use that?
They need to be going through Sun Valley. And we want to monitor Sun Valley and make sure that it's, whatever condition it's in today, is the condition or better that it's going to be.
That will be an agreement that's got to be established, but the conditions in there that we need to establish that before construction.
But it's not only Sun Valley, you've got,
But I think
All the access roads.
Right, but ultimately ending up at Sunrise Trail, yeah.
the most important thing to that, though, is gonna be that has to be documented and probably videotaped and probably needs to be
Yep.
walked and stuff, because the agreement is gonna be worthless if people get into a dispute after the fact as to what condition was in before they started.
Yeah, and that'll be hammered out as part of the agreement, right, when we get to that point.
Well, and let me ask this question just from input from people here who have come up to the meeting. Do you want them to make improvements?
That's
Being an
another,
existing condition.
that's another question. I mean, and in order to answer that, I think we need to know what really is the construction or condition of that road. How much is the base, how much is the pavement, what condition is it in? Maybe that's something worthy of consideration.
do you want me to have?
I asked that question while John was gone on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, John, do you know the road situation coming in there? Are there improvements that should be done? I mean, there was a lot of talk about ingress and egress off of 59 and stuff like that. I don't know that anybody is going there, but as to our roads, do we need ditches? Do we need things, wedging? I'm using lines, I have no idea what they,
Are you talking about specific to?
Yeah, Sun
Sun
Valley,
Valley.
it's not
Sun
unreasonable
Valley.
that to have it be in better shape when they're done.
I don't know what's, that would be a call that would be made by DPW.
Well, we said maintain at a minimum their existing, their current condition prior to starting construction when they're done.
Yeah. At a minimum.
All right.
But that's something the board can discuss at the meeting.
And the specifics of that actual agreement, of what goes into that agreement will happen after approvals.
We gotta look at the details. The answer to that, is if they go through and break up a lot of that pavement, I think it's all full of cracks and all that kind of stuff, then they simply say, hey, we'll squirt some crack filler in, we're done. I think we've got to get a little bit, think deeper into that. That might necessitate reconstruction or
Mhm.
repavement, right?
Agreed. And that's what they've agreed to do. That's what they said in the last meeting. They said
Right.
that they will
We
repair the road to our
good
standard.
agreement that puts that down in writing.
Yeah, I
A rock-
assume the
a
town
rock
has
s-
used other agreements prior to construction of many subdivisions in the town. There's a standard agreement that you guys have used, or is that not?
I don't think so. A solid agreement with a bond attached to it. Right?
It's
Bond or
good.
letter of credit, counselor?
Letter of credit. Bonds, I only make money. I have to sue the bonding company and then you're mad because
Right.
you had to pay me.
No, we're never mad about paying you. We love paying attorneys.
Parking restrictions, that was on your other one?
Yep, right, parking restrictions.
Have you
Now, I have to tell you, that's gonna be tough to enforce because it's private property. And if the private
There's
property
an
owner,
Yeah.
and if the private property owner doesn't complain and doesn't call you in and isn't willing to testify in court, But, I mean, we do it all the time, we say fire lanes and things like that, but.
Put it in there and put it in there, or we just don't have a method to make them comply with it.
Not necessarily, but that doesn't mean you don't put it in. It's the right thing to do, and as Kathy said, if there's an emergency, trucks have a way of moving those cars. Not necessarily to the advantage of the cars.
All right, so parking restrictions, we had condo docks, we had soft center. He's saying approved by chief Buchholz, but we are now saying it's either changing the ordinance or remove it. Soft center of Sun Valley cul-de-sac maintenance easement exhibit and terms and conditions submitted and approved by the town. Again, that's going to depend on whether the code is changed. Emergency access and gate operation for by emergency services accepted by chief Buchholz. We have that tonight. And then the last one, more about stormwater improvements. He says at the public hearing, Josh mentioned that they have committed to doing stormwater improvements on downstream properties. I believe specifically on the golf course and the Schrader property on Merrill Hills Road. These improvements are not listed or shown anywhere. This information should be provided, ideally included in the plans as well as within the stormwater management plan approved by the county. Secondly, easements and/or agreements between the developer and the landowner should be in place. So does that make sense to everybody? All right, then he has a final note. This is with respect to item 8, which is the development agreement for construction access. He says,
I wonder if he didn't mean item 9.
That would be the repair of the
repair of
roads.
town roads, yeah, and we just talked about this, the letter of credit.
Yeah.
I had a couple others real
Yeah.
quick, because I didn't get to do one. Design to a 100-year event.
Stormwater design of any event.
I don't know if there was ambiguity in that regard, but I had the sense that everybody wanted to make sure it was.
So correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that typically what happens anyways?
That is what stormwater management is designed for, I believe.
I thought so too, but we wrote this down. Does anybody
Am I wrong, Brian?
I'm not sure. I think that may be a higher standard than someone is, but I think we need to.
You could,
That's a
I've
question.
I've seen people.
I thought they made that representation.
Yeah, they did make the representation. I thought the county's ordinance says 100-year event. I've seen developments where community centers require them to do more than that, the 200-year event, for instance, as
Mm.
developments where
I already knew such a thing existed.
there's been
200-year event.
extreme flooding or other problems, et cetera. I mean, so that's happened
Yeah,
before.
it's called a hurricane.
The 100-year event was mentioned at the meeting. I didn't write it down because my assumption was that that's not required. We'll double check for that.
It'd be good to check it, but I'm 99% there.
Okay, I have a note, all units are 75 feet from wetlands. That was a requirement.
They're showing that right now on their plan, but we'll have that as a condition.
That's what I had on my list that I read off at the end of the.
Just a quick, is it assumed the town is doing garbage collection? I don't think that's been discussed at all, is that assumed?
Yes.
So, access for that, what, and I know they say this
Do we
is.
do garbage collection for all other
What's that?
families?
Yeah,
I mean, like that garbage.
I'm assuming that it is so. And I'm assuming on this, I know they pretty much saying this is gonna be adults or what or not, but I mean, if school bus entry or whatever, I mean, they gotta work out the mechanics if they're gonna have this gated community to have those kind of people get in and out, I would assume. That's not our issue.
Not our issue.
I agree. So a quick question, is these conditions, additional conditions, is there going to be a recommendation, or is that going to be left up to the Plan Commission Town Board as to which of these things need to be fulfilled prior to approval, or not? Is that an item for discussion? I mean, are we going to require like the delineation of the natural resources area and all of that kind of stuff, and how that modified plan, is that going to be conditions you're going to require to fulfill those before we consider granting approval?
That is a good question.
Well, I think that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, I think that's an easy question to answer. They're not going to get they're not going to permit until they have a concurrence for delineation. You know, for example, they're not going to get a permit until they get the plan amendment. They're not going to get a permit until the county is okay with the INR area, specifically the septic areas. I mean, they're not going to get a permit from.
I understand permitting. My question is, this is probably not the place to discuss it. I'll just leave it at the question. I'm specifically talking about town of Waukesha approval. And this is probably not the place to discuss that, but whether the judgment is going to be that this is completed.
There's 3 types of conditions. One is you can't get we're not even going to say yes or no until we know the following. Is that what you're speaking of?
I am.
Okay, that would be something you'd have to say. We're not ready to vote. We want to see this detail or that detail. And then you have conditions preceding, as John was speaking, conditions preceding to start of construction or start of roads or start of whatever, and then you have conditions that are just forever conditions.
Of course.
And I always talk about conditions preceding versus conditions subsequent. But the others I wouldn't call conditions. Those would be considerations that you need before you would vote to approve or deny.
I think it would be unreasonable to ask somebody to go through all of this, and not have a conditional approval based on these conditions being met.
But let's go through and see which, I mean, some people might say, okay, we're back, I want to remind everybody, we're doing this under PUD, and under the PUD, and Sean will know this better than I, we have a very formal application process. This is what we need before you can apply. And I asked numerous times, do we have everything? And everybody said, yes, we have everything. And then there are things they have to do after they get their approval under the code. Okay? So I just wanted to first reiterate this is a unique prospect in and of itself.
I would say the one thing, no matter what they need to do before approval or denial, is updated construction plans and updated condo plan that matches their new site plan. It's got to be a cohesive package. That would be a complete application.
Agreed.
So we need at least that, no matter what.
The final condo plan and construction plans.
And the condo docs.
Yes.
That's where I was
I don't
going.
know.
Condo docs is sort of
I don't know.
because they sort of ebb and flow based on, they sit down and they decide, yeah, we only needed, a minimum of 1,500, but we decided we want a minimum of 2,000. That would be square feet per
Yeah,
building.
so
Sure. We would like the condo docs so that we know what's there, but they're always amendable.
Right. So I guess I agree. I think the code may even say that they have to have draft at some point.
condo docs are, this is an anomaly. It's not a subdivision plat, it's a condo plat. It talks about following the process for a subdivision, but it doesn't say anything about submitting condo docs as part of it. That's something that is extraneous to the process because this is sort of outside
Okay.
typical subdivision.
Right.
It's like a development agreement. Are we going to require that before approval? Probably not, right? That would be hashed out after the fact based on all these other conditions.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, so just
But
those-
let's go back to Brian's comment, if I may. Is there
Right.
something that you think the board, and we'll speak to you individually, so we've written down that Kathy or Sean will notify them, we got to have the final condo plat here, and consistent, they're not changing anything, because they make any significant changes, we're starting over. They got to know that. They make changes that are based on the testimony at the hearing, okay?
The site plan that was provided at the hearing.
And so, condo, plat, and construction plans are the only two, and if they have draft condo documents, we have reason to believe some people would like to see them. Is that a fair statement?
I guess if you're going to ask my point of view, I would think most of these things on the list are, from my perspective, and I may be alone on that, are considerations. I think most of those things should be in place before approval. Some of the ones. the gate-operated sensors, the letter of credit, or that type of thing, or what or not. I mean, I guess some of those, I might look the other way, but I think most of these other things, we were talking about the land development part of it and everything, I would think field delineation of the isolated natural resource areas and that type of thing, I think that should be in place before town approval. That's just my point of view.
What about county approvals?
What there?
What about county approvals, stormwater, erosion control, what about that stuff?
I think final storm, water, and erosion control, final approval of that can be conditioned, but I think at least there should be a conceptual approval of that type of thing, but final approval, I think, can be a condition deferred.
So let me ask you a question, Brian.
Mhm.
You want a developer to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars field delineating before he knows he's going to have the option to build.
In this instance, I think that's appropriate, yes.
The wetlands have
think
been
that's-
delineated, they're just waiting for concurrence.
I understand. I think that's totally unreasonable. To go out and spend money when you don't even know if you have a project? Who would do that?
But you and I respectfully disagree on that.
And I've watched this progression for 37 years now, and it's fascinating to watch how there was no stormwater work done at all, to stormwater was done totally after the preliminary plat was approved, because they'd come in with the final plat and they'd say, well, we've lost 3 lots because based on the stormwater, we had to increase the size of the ponds or things like that, to now, you know, most communities requiring some, to some now requiring everything. So this has been an amazing, and the amount of things the developers have in varies community to community, I'm sure you see it too, what do they need before approval? So Brian's saying that he'd like to see, you know, what he'd like to see, and that's fair. I mean, that's what we asked.
What was the last major subdivision that was approved in town?
Rolling Oaks addition.
So what was the process for that one?
Well, stormwater, I mean, gets done beforehand, and that's a county thing, that's not us.
Right, separate process.
But to delineate anything in the field, never happened. I mean, just, unless you can think of one, Brian, where we made somebody delineate where things were before we approved a project.
Well, I would tell you, a lot of times when you look at things, oftentimes the delineations have to be done before you can even do like a land division or that type of thing, because you don't even know you've got a buildable lot. So yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. For a
typically done
wetland
before the fact.
delineation, you're talking about something else.
Well, at this point in time, I don't see, and you said the wetland delineation is already done, I don't think this is, for as much has been invested in this, and as much sensitivity is for those natural resource areas, I don't think that's a huge requirement or expectation to do that.
Can I walk through a couple of them that are questions in my mind? Number one, they won't be done with the county until March or April. So are we tabling this until March or April until they get their land use? Because I would think the county would say, if you're not approving this thing, we're not changing it from you know, recreation to low density. So this is a real chicken or an egg. I'm sorry, for those who don't have it, the petitioner shall obtain approval of the Waukesha County Comprehensive Plan Amendment for the parcel. So if you're going to say they may not even, well, I don't think the county will approve it. I mean, the county might conditionally approve it upon you approving it, but that's not normally what the county does. So that's a real, because they have no control over the time. This isn't something like they can hire somebody to go and delineate. They're going through the process where they're either asking for a special. Now, has anybody talked to them about this one? I should have asked that first. Do you know if they've asked?
No, this.
For you know, permission to move ahead of schedule.
Not that I know.
So is that a condition precedent, or is that a, you know, we won't consider it till you have the amendment done? Does anybody want to respond?
I guess I don't feel particularly strongly about that one. I could live with that as a condition. I don't know what others think.
Which one, number 3 are you talking about?
Number 1.
Oh, number 1.
Petition should include preservation restrictions of the condo plat
Yeah.
to the satisfaction of the county. That's just a given. They got to do it. You know, and whether they do it now or do it later, it seems to me that's a condition.
That was one of the county's conditions. We basically just copied it as part of ours. And if in the event that they don't satisfy that one, they're not getting their approvals.
I mean, that's not something you do in advance. That's something you just do. You know, I suppose they could write the preservation restrictions on the plat and point to them and say, here's the language, and the county signed off on the language, I suppose.
I'm assuming the next plat that we get, that we see is gonna have that on it.
Okay, field delineation of the isolated natural areas, concurrence with the only thing is whether that's weather related or not. I don't know. Are isolated natural areas able to be done year round?
Wetland, no.
No.
INRAs, I don't think so. I think there's a season for that
Yep,
too.
it is.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
There is.
But-
There's a season on it, because I had my place delineated.
But again, this is a
There was a
condition that
Well,
has
delineation is,
to be
but
done.
INRA
Oh.
is something, maybe
Yeah,
something
and
different.
I didn't have to do that
I think
because I
there's a
had
season,
that.
but I'm not
I don't know.
100%.
I mean, I certainly don't know, but the point is, it is what it is, wherever they are, and they gotta obey and follow the rules, and they can't use those
Yeah,
areas.
I mean, the thing about the INRA is it's pretty well defined by the trees that are on the property. And if it changes, it's not gonna change substantially. I don't know, the question for the Plan Commission Board is that anything, we're impacting the INRA to some degree. At the last meeting, it was kind of felt, in the discussion that had happened, is that it wasn't a major impact, that the Plan Commission Board could live with the impact of the INRA per the framework of the comprehensive plan language. Any changes to that is going to be a slight deviation in the actual boundary of the INRA. We want to know what it is, for sure, but is it going to impact decisions? I don't know, probably not. I don't think it's going to change substantially.
And talk about one that's changed in the last 37 years. They used to only have wetlands, and you filled them. And then we went to primary environmental corridor, and then we went to secondary environmental corridor, and now we deal with isolated natural resource areas. And
The only
property
diff-
owners just shake their head. I mean,
I mean, this
they're
doesn't,
looking for the blending turtles
Yeah.
and the garter snakes, it's just.
this doesn't necessarily change perhaps where the town should be at, and maybe that won't move significantly, and maybe it will. It's kind of even baffling to me that they would not have done that already, because they've got an inordinate amount of time invested in doing the layouts and the planning and all that type of thing. I guess that doesn't affect our decision. I sure think that would be a prudent thing to do that
I
sooner
don't-
rather than later.
I don't know that they knew that they were going to be required to do that. That was something the county mentioned
Yeah.
originally, and then it was brought up by one or more residents at the public hearing as being a concern. So I'm not sure they.
You're talking about delineating the INRA?
The INRA, yeah.
I was at the county on a separate matter last week or the week before, and the county had talked about where they were happy with them mostly staying out of the INRA, and so they must have had communication with the county regarding that.
I guess I'm happy to hear that discussion, but I think we need to have a definitive answer as to whether or not that can be done at certain times of the year. I guess I'd like to know that information and
I was
have a
thinking of
discussion.
wetlands.
What's
When
that?
I was speaking about wetlands.
Yeah, but the IRNR, I don't know the answer to that, but if somebody knows that answer.
Are you asking if
Get that
it's
shown.
delineated? It's shown on their site plan.
No,
No,
whether they
it's
can do
it's
the
not-
field
it's not
delineation
field
at this time
delineated.
of year.
It's shown from the topos or
Then they have to do a survey.
the aerials,
Yeah.
right?
The GIS, county's GIS system, they pulled it out for the.
Okay.
So I think we need a definitive,
Well, I think we all agree
answer
it needs to
that.
be field delineated, and they didn't object, and that sewer pact has to agree with, concur with the field delineation, just like the wetlands. They've got the wetlands done, but they don't have the DNR, they didn't have at the time of the hearing, the DNR letter, concurrence. They anticipated receiving decision apparently. Well, I'm getting a message that you're going to expect updates on I'm not going to continue going through these, I think we have the sense, you're going to require an update on every one of these concerns, as well as, Sean's original conditions. Where are you at on these conditions, so we can feel comfortable that you are going to be able to satisfy them and meet them? For instance, have you gone out and looked at the road, and you realize what kind of shape the road's in? And I mean, even as simple as that, you realize what we're going to require. Don't just say, okay, we know we got to put your road back in the same shape, know what that means.
The big picture part is that I find somewhat disconcerting. I know they've worked on this a long time. There's an inordinate amount of time and effort invested in the plan, and I think most aspects of that, I think it's a good plan, there's an incredible amount of effort into it, but I mean, we basically got a new plan with a key element of it for the road access dumped on us. I mean, I saw that 20 minutes before last meeting, and that's discomforting. I just have to say it that way.
So is there anything of the 9 that we want to make sure that they have done prior to the meeting?
Well, it's not
Or
even just the 9.
if they're
It's
done.
from the original staff report as well. There's
Plus the other 14.
Well, we already said the construction plans
Yep,
and
I
the
got
condo
that.
plat,
Mhm.
and we'd have to go through them and
I mean, because.
The ones that we normally require.
I don't know what happens.
So the updated construction, road construction plans and the approved, the final plat.
At a minimum, is the INRA part of that? The condo docs are part of that.
A draft of the condo docs, from my perspective.
Draft of the docs, okay.
Field delineation of INRA. Is that your question?
Yeah, the field delineation, whether or not sewer pack is concurred or not, maybe it'd be nice to at least see it. And again, I don't even know seasonally if that's possible at this point.
I mean, what we're saying right now, I don't mean to pick on it, but if you look at number 7 there, and I think you've done some really good work with this, Sean, putting it together. But I mean, if you take your words, number 7 says the petitioner shall submit to the town clerk and receive approval as to form from the town attorney and the town board. Construction access and road protection plan, that basically says that has to be submitted to the town board for approval. My reading of that,
No,
I think.
I've written it as a condition of approval. So once you approve it, this is a condition that they submit that.
I understand that, but it says for approval by the town board. To me, that says at a minimum, that has to come back to the town board.
It will. The town
At a
board
later
will
date.
review the development agreement.
And I guess I would,
construction access.
for my part, if it has to come back to the town board, I would sooner see that before the fact rather than after the fact. That's just
and
my
you
point.
can say that, but I can't do it.
What's that?
I can't do the developer's agreement until I know what the development as approved is.
No,
I
I'm talk-
can't do, but the developer's agreement's coming back also. Generally,
that's
the
gotta come
the
back.
developers, okay,
I was talking about the road, number 7, the road, the construction access and road.
Sure.
And that could be folded into the development agreement, and sometimes it is.
I'm just saying, that's fine, you can require it, but I would have a tough time reviewing the road plan because I don't know until the project is approved whether you're going to require them to come in off of Merrill Hills Road or come in off of Sun Valley or come off of both, because that's part of, they can't write and I can't review the agreement until I know what's approved.
I appreciate that, but I guess I'm looking at a little bit different perspective. I would think it would be prudent for the town board at a minimum to see the draft of that construction access and road protection agreement. I wouldn't have a problem with approving that as a condition, subject to the approval of the town attorney, but I guess as a town board member, I'd like to at least know what the substance of that is, so it isn't, we're just come back and squirt tar in the cracks after the road's all beat to hell. I understand it's a chicken or egg thing, but I think
Well, that one's not.
at a minimum, that should be in place for the town board to be able to consider
So a draft of
what
that as
that
well.
means. Yeah.
That's not a chicken or egg thing. We need to know that beforehand. We need to know the condition of the road and what the condition of the road's gonna be when they're done.
He's
Yeah,
talking
I wanna
about
see-
before he
you two are
votes
talking about
on
two
the
different
approval.
things.
Yeah.
Well,
Before
no.
he votes on the approval, he wants a draft of the agreement.
I want to know what it means.
The developer's agreement is one thing. I think the road condition agreement is a whole separate
Well,
issue.
why are we holding the road condition agreement to a different standard than the developer's agreement? I mean, if we're going to approve this plan, let's just talk about those two things. If we're going to approve this plan contingent on approval of the developer's agreement at some date in the future, and if in the end the board doesn't approve the developer's agreement, then this whole thing is scrapped. Why would we hold the road portion of that to a different standard.
From my perspective, because the developer's agreement is always afterhand, but we've never forced anybody to fix our roads.
Okay, let me just tell you,
That doesn't answer my
I find this interesting discussion because it's usually the developer who's making Brian's argument, not the town board. And let me tell you why. If it's approved, subject to a road agreement, and everything falls apart if you don't give us what we want in the road agreement.
Right.
If they come in with a draft road agreement and we want more stuff in it later, they're going to say, I don't have to give you anything more. You approve
Our
this
position is
conceptually.
gone.
Pardon?
Any leverage, any position we got is gone.
Right, and so I would argue you would want it subject to, after the approval, the developer's agreement and the road agreement, because, as you said, you've got all your leverage in place. If they come in and say, we showed you a draft and you didn't say you were going to require the ditches, or you didn't say you were going to require it, and you say, well, that was just a draft, and they say, well,
Well, maybe
That's
I
not
shouldn't
what
have
you're
used the
saying.
word draft. We need to have this stuff up front rather than arguing it
Well, what I
downstream.
No, he's saying
What I
go
hear from-
downstream.
Yeah, what I hear from
And
the
I'm saying
attorney,
not.
I'm very
I understand,
confused.
and the developer would agree with you. The developer would say, I want everything nailed down. I just negotiated this with Newman, and he wanted everything nailed down ahead of time, so you couldn't come back as
So-
a town board and ask for anything more.
Attorney Macy, you just made the argument to do it after, as a conditional approval, right?
I did.
Okay, and you were making the
I
argument.
disagree.
Okay, but when he was explaining it, you said you agreed.
No.
Okay, that is what you said, that's what I heard.
Like,
So I just want to make sure that
Wipe the chalkboard clean.
you're talking about two different
Okay, what
things.
I'm saying is wipe the chalkboard clean, okay?
Okay.
I don't think the town, and I understand what he's saying from the developer's point of view, but I don't think we're going to put the town in a position of, after this in a condition, have to spend God knows how much time and effort and attorney's fees and special meetings and all that kind of stuff to try to see if we can hammer out an agreement that basically deals with construction access and road protection.
Okay.
Why can't we, at this point in time, get in words for construction access? Oak Knoll shall not be used for construction access, period. Why can't we get that in writing at this point in time?
That's already a condition. That's a condition. That will be a black letter condition, but that's not the road construction and videotaping and letter of credit and again, it all boils-
You're wandering now on me. I said letter of credit. I understand that can come downstream.
No, we're talking about only the agreement. The contract that they entered into with us to put our roads back into as good or better shape. And what's in that agreement is the videotaping, a bid on, potential, contract, because you got to have a bid before you can set a letter of credit. Somebody speculates as to what the
Okay, but
damage is
where I
going
guess
to be.
why I'm digging deeper is I don't know what as good or better condition means, and I would prefer to see that fleshed out before the fact rather than arguing about it later. That's my
Well, what does it
simple
mean
point
to
of
you?
view. Huh?
What does it mean to you? Because everybody's going to, that's a subjective.
What is, but I think we need to start with one saying, what kind of condition is
Okay,
that road in
and
right
Kathy
now?
made the point, and she was right on. That, I hear somewhat what you're saying, maybe, is that you want more, and I hate, it's a cliche, you want more meat on the
My
bones of
words
some of these
exactly.
conditions.
Precisely.
And so if it's currently a Pacer 7, we require it to be a Pacer 7, or if you decide you want it to be a Pacer 8, that kind of detail could be put in.
And that's what I want.
Okay, so on that one, he wants more detail. Not necessarily the final agreement, but he wants more detail.
I want to frame that discussion and put a little more meat on the bones.
Any others that you see that's a very good one. How about the developer's agreement? How much meat do you want on the bones of the developer's agreement ahead of time?
I guess I'll defer to your recommendation in that regard.
Well, there is a model developer's agreement that we use as a minimum that talks about when they get building permits and things like that. So we could say that we anticipate they're going to follow the same rules of any other developer, of the model, tweaking it because it's a condominium plat versus a subdivision plat. But we could say that.
But here's the condition. It says, the petitioner shall submit to the town clerk and receive approval as to form from the town attorney and town board, approval of a developer's agreement for the improvements, including all public, private, and site development improvements, prior to commencing construction of any public, private, and site development improvements, or recording of the condo plat, whichever occurs first.
Okay, then, that's great. And then he's saying, and I want more meat on that bones. I want it to say, and at a minimum, the model developers agreement for the subdivision will be followed as a guide. That's an example. I'm only giving it as an example.
Agreed. And some of this may be easier than with others, but we've got developers agreements where the town has had its foot in all kinds of different buckets about paving. And when we require or allow somebody to do final course of paving or whatnot, that may be largely irrelevant in this regard if these are basically going to be private roads, okay? But it may apply to the cul-de-sac and that type of thing or what or not. So I think some of that final, do some of that as condition is fine. That may be simpler than some of the others. I don't mind that so much a condition because I think that's pretty easy.
Well, all I can suggest is that Sean's going to send out a new draft.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he can copy anybody that you or Kathy, she'll copy staff and Kathy copies. And if you want it ahead of time so you can comment and be prepared to add more detail, that'd be great. We'll get it out.
Good.
Okay.
I got 105.
There's nothing else that is a must?
One real quick one for you if you want. I looked at Rolling Oaks. I don't know which property these are. Maybe someone pointed out, but I will tell you on Tim Drive, what I see on here is nothing less than 1% slope. And if on the pavement areas and on the ditches, some of that may go a little bit flatter on the outside of the curve. But I used the trusty ruler here that Terry gave me. 1%, if ditches are constructed to 1% grade, they ought to drain. So look at that more. Again, I don't know exactly which lots those are, but there should not be drainage issues if it was built this way.
So we got about 50 minutes on
What's that? Which lots, do you know which lots those are?
I don't.
No.